Well, hello there, herb nerds, plant lovers, and nature enthusiasts. This is Jocelyn. Some of you may know me from other platforms. I know I've been pushed for several years now to start a YouTube channel, and I have so many hours of footage recorded. But during editing, I'm always like, this isn't good enough, and I just kept putting it back on the shelf and thinking, I'll just do it tomorrow, I'll just do it another day. But circumstances have changed, and I just thought, you know what, it's now or never. Tomorrow isn't promised, as they say, so it's better to just put my big girl pants on and just do it. And so I figured, well, if I wanted to put out my first video, what do I do? And I figured, well, today, October 13th, is World Thrombosis Day. And I figured, why don't I make my first video one that will help spread awareness about this topic, especially because very recently I've become inducted involuntarily into this group of survivors, these strong people, and I just know, if for any reason I'm not here tomorrow, at least I had put out one video, and if it would make a difference even to just one person, then I've done my job. So it's just a little bit of a win. So I figure, why not? So I wanted just to share a little bit about what is a pulmonary embolism, a little bit about my story, how it happened to me. Usually when I'm on the screen, for those of you who know me, friends and family and colleagues, a lot of you know me because I'm either talking about plants, houseplant care, pet care, endangered species. I am an herbalist. I'm a conservationist, an urban naturalist, an educator, so that's why I'm usually in front of the camera. But the thought of recording like YouTube videos, things like that, it's always been very terrifying to me. So I apologize in advance. But I'm telling myself I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna put this out there. So I'm gonna just share my story. So I wanted to share a couple things first. So basically, what is an embolus? So an embolus is a blood clot, if for those that don't know. It can be a blood clot. Well, it can also be an air bubble, a deposit of fat, of like adipose tissue, that's carried throughout the body and can get lodged somewhere potentially. And so thrombosis is the process through which that is formed. So also the thrombus is also a blood clot that forms in a blood vessel. So a deep vein thrombosis is when it forms in a vein that's located deep inside your body. So this can happen in your leg, most commonly in your calf, but it can happen behind your knee, it can happen in your thighs, your groin area, it can happen in your arms. It can also happen in your jugular, also in your abdomen. So, and there was somebody in my support group that it happened, I think, in their like oviduct. So some part like in their ovary, their fallopian tube, it actually happened there. So it can just happen like that. And so what happens is with a pulmonary embolism is that DVT, so that embolus, dislodges and travels through your body and reaches your heart. So for some people, it can cause cardiac arrest. It gets lodged in their heart and they die almost immediately. But for others, it travels through the heart and gets lodged in your lungs and in your pulmonary arteries. So, yeah. It's like luck, but yeah, not really. So this has its own host of issues, because then you could still easily die from that. There's not enough oxygen and blood flow getting into your lungs, that it's a blockage. You could still start to go into cardiac arrest, have a heart attack, and die instantly in some cases. So 1/3 of people that are either undiagnosed, so they had no idea that they had it, or do know that they had it but refuse treatment, usually die. And usually 2 out of 3 patients die within 2 hours of presentation. And the mortality rate, when you're untreated, let's say, so it's at 30, it's as high as 30%, but even when you are diagnosed and they're trying to treat you, your mortality rate is still at 8%. So it's still insanely high. And 10% of patients will just die suddenly. So it's not a little thing. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, just how close I was to death, as it were. So what happened with me was I noticed at the end of April and into May that I was having some chest tightness. Now, I have asthma. I've had asthma since I was 18 years old. I'm now 32. I live a very active lifestyle. So up until COVID, I was hiking several hours a week. Every morning, I would be meeting up with my friends. We would go birding. I also had standing appointments for birding tours. I'm an urban naturalist, and any chance to see any birds, to learn any new species, I'm there. So there are a lot of really early morning walks available. So before I started on my day and would be going out on assignments or meeting up for consultations, I would be doing some birding. So I was walking an average of 3 to 4 hours every morning. And on Thursdays, I volunteer at the New York Botanical Garden, and so I would be on my feet for almost 10 hours. So, which was fine for me. Fine for me. So I'd be doing a lot of my volunteer work, and I'd be standing up for 8 hours, up to 10 hours, because I would go early, have some breakfast, look around, go do my volunteer work, then leave. And if I didn't have an appointment or something right afterwards, then I would stay in the garden and go check out the exhibits and meet up with fellow students. I was also taking classes there. So I was there for 10 to 12 hours a day on my feet. So I was being very active. And I was at almost peak health for me. I was probably in the best shape of my life at that point. Even with my asthma, I was doing things like Zumba, and I was even doing like the monkey bars and all that stuff, and I was very excited at how strong I had become. So I was in pretty good health. So this is why it just kind of took me by surprise. So in March, we had lockdown. I'm here in NYC. So in mid-March, we had our lockdown, and so of course that put a curb in everything, because I no longer deemed it safe. I couldn't go to the parks with around a lot of people. I didn't want to be on the subway system at risk. I have asthma, so the prospect of getting COVID was insanely terrifying. So what I did is I was just trying to kind of focus on things here. So I started going through the closets and stuff like that, and really dove into work from home as much as I would be able to do from home. And I started getting this chest tightness, and I just chalked it up to my asthma. I thought I just was having a flare-up. I have several correspondences with friends and colleagues in which they're asking me how I'm holding up, how I'm feeling, and I was telling them that I had some chest tightness and that I thought I was having an asthma flare-up. So on May 12th, I woke up and I had pain in my left calf. And I thought I must have pulled something. I must be in that age where you pull stuff in your sleep, apparently. And I chalked it up to that. I went on with my day. The next day, I woke up in even more pain. I tried to rest my leg as much as I could. I was alternating between hot and cold. I even had my husband help me. We massaged the area. We put icy hot, and then we put a brace. So I was able to sleep with that. And I thought, of course, by morning I should feel a little bit better. But by morning I did not. It was hurting even when I was laying down. And when I went to just stand up, I could not put any weight on my leg. And I immediately screamed. I threw myself back on the bed, had my just screaming fest because I was in so much pain, and I had to log into class because I was taking online classes at that time. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go get this checked out. I'm gonna go to CityMD. It's a walk-in clinic here I had to go there because my regular doctor's office, which is only 2 blocks away, they had to shut down due to COVID. So I said, all right, my class ends at 1. Let me just kind of get through class, and then I'll go. I'll just go to CityMD and let them, maybe I might have to go see a sports medicine doctor. Maybe I tore something. I don't know. I have never felt this type of pain in my life. So I must have hurt myself. I don't know how, but I must have hurt myself. Now, I wasn't presenting the usual clinical symptoms. I did not have any swelling, no redness, no heat, no discoloration, bruising, nothing. I only had pain. And that's very important because a lot of people, if it's just pain, it's more easy for them to just chalk it up to something else. Usually if it's red and hot and swelling, it looks like there's something wrong. So you have to go to a doctor ASAP. So I was doing my class, and it was towards the end of class that all of a sudden I had a flash. I love medical shows and medical dramas, both fiction and nonfiction. And I had recently binged The Resident, and due to quarantine. So I had a flash of an episode in which one of the characters, a guest character, an athlete, was there presenting with a DVT, which is deep vein thrombosis, and which then got dislodged, and he was having a PE, or he had a PE. And all of a sudden it just popped in my head. I said, what if I have a blood clot? So I decided to write, so as I'm taking class, I wrote to my cousin who's a doctor, and I brought up I had some leg pain, and does she think it warrants me having to go to see a doctor? And that, how does a blood clot feel like? And does she think that this sounds like a blood clot? Then I simultaneously messaged one of my close friends who's a nurse, and I said, hey, I'm having some leg pain. Do you think I should go to the doctor? But I did not mention the blood clot to her. And what was amazing, I have to say it as an afterthought, is she immediately was saying, well, how does it feel? Because it could be a blood clot. So she just, from the get, she knew that something's, suspicious. My cousin was saying, we have a history, we have family members who have heart issues. We've had heart disease, heart attack, stroke in the family. It's just better if you go get checked. And then my friend who's a nurse was like, listen, that's serious. You should consider just going just to rule it out. So I did. I finished class. I took an Uber to City MD, went in, told them that I think I might have injured my leg. However, is it possible that I could have a blood clot? And how would they know if I did? So they immediately asked me if I had shortness of breath, to which I answered yes, but I have asthma, I said. And then they listened to my chest and they told me, well, it's not your asthma because we don't hear any wheezing. So whatever's causing your chest tightness is not your asthma. So impending, dread, was definitely settling in. And I'm going, what if my suspicion is correct? So they tell me they can't do anything else there because they don't have the equipment to scan me or anything. So I have no choice. I have to go to the emergency room. I'm not happy about that. I'm panicking. It's the middle of a pandemic. It was mid-May, still the height of the pandemic. Not eager to go to a hospital, but I say fine. So I go. I try to mentally prepare. I walk into the emergency room limping, and I say, I need to get checked in. And of course, they're in full PPE, checking my vitals, my temperature, all that jazz. I go in, they start to evaluate me. And at first, the doctor starts to assume that I have a sports injury. So they start to say, oh, you might have pulled something. And that's when I say, well, I brought up the fact that maybe it could be a blood clot. Like, what can we do to rule that out? And so that's when they said, okay, well, let's run a blood test. And while the blood is being run, we can do a scan of your leg, a Doppler. So I said, fine. So they did. They didn't find anything in my leg at that point. So then they said, all right, well, let's, we'll wait for the blood. And that's when they came back. They said, well, your D-dimer levels are slightly elevated. So that tells us we need to explore further. There might be something wrong. So let's get you in for another Doppler of your other leg. And then also have you take a CT angiogram of your chest. So to see with iodine to really see what's going on in there. Fine. So I do those. They don't find anything in my other leg. They do the scan of my chest, and I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. And then they finally come, and the doctor, I knew something was wrong because the doctor went from standing to crouching down at my level, at eye level. And I already knew there was something's afoot. And that's when he tells me, well, we found blood clots. And I was like, okay, where? And they said, well, you have blood clots in your lungs, in both your lungs. And you have to stay in the hospital. And I said, I was just in disbelief. And I was like, wait. Like, what do you mean? How long do I have to stay? And they're like, well, I'm not sure, but you have to stay. This kills people. And I started sobbing. And I'm wearing my mask. I'm just sobbing. So I call my husband. I decided to wait. So I didn't tell my mom. She's in Costa Rica. And I didn't tell my father just yet. I just needed to process it. And I called my brothers. And even my brother, the middle brother, was telling me that it was a good call that I didn't tell my mom just yet until I got more information, and that it's good I'm waiting till I calm myself down before I call her and freak her out, because she's in a different country. So I'm not going to make the situation any easier if I'm calling her, bawling my eyes out. I needed to compose myself. And once I had more information as to how they were going to proceed, I could give her more answers. Because if I called her bawling, then she was just going to ask, well, what are they going to do? And I wouldn't know what to answer her. So it was just better that way if I just waited a little bit. So as I settled in for the night, I was having a panic attack. I could not, I would start to fall asleep and I couldn't breathe. And so I started thinking, I was lack of sleep. I wasn't eating. I couldn't eat anything that they gave me. I was starting to become delirious. So I really thought if I close my eyes, I'm gonna die. And of course I was Googling and finding out all these statistics. And I was like, oh gosh, people can die like within hours of being diagnosed. Like I thought I'm gonna close my eyes and I'm not gonna wake up. So that started my stay there, and I stayed for 3 days. And thankfully, for the second day, my husband was not able to come in, of course, but he was able to drop off a bag. So I was able to have my toiletries and changes of several pairs of pajamas. So I was much more comfortable, and snacks, things like that. So it just helped mentally. And I was basically on FaceTime with my husband the entire time. So as the doctors were rotating, they just kept telling me how lucky I was. I had one doctor say that they couldn't believe I walked in to the hospital on my own. I had one doctor explaining to me that it had traveled through my heart and crumbled apart essentially and went into my lungs, and that how lucky I had been that they got stuck where they got stuck. So I knew it was serious, but I was struggling. I was really struggling. And then all I could think about was, well, what if I had died at home? What if I hadn't gone to the ER? What if now I was on blood thinners? What if my husband would have just found me dead? I would have died in my sleep or something like that. And what was incredibly odd was that in the weeks leading up to my diagnosis, I suffer from manic depression, from bipolar disorder. And I have a journal that I like to use kind of like therapy. It's an outlet. And so I was having some very dark thoughts. I kept having thoughts that I was going to die. So those with depression, it's not outrageous to have dark thoughts where you think, but most of the time it's I don't want to be here type of thoughts. Thoughts of what if I wasn't here anymore? But this was more like I had no choice, that there was something coming to take me out. And I felt this strong need to write letters to friends and family. And I thought, well, maybe if I just do it as kind of a therapeutic exercise, I can just kind of get those feelings out, and maybe it'll just quiet the feelings. And I did. I wrote notes to family and friends in my journal. And I did feel a little bit better, but it didn't make it go away. I learned after the fact that when you are suffering from a DVT, or especially a pulmonary embolism, a very common symptom is impending doom, where you start to feel like you're gonna die. It almost can feel like paranoia. But it's really your body is essentially sending out a mayday signal. It's trying to scream at you that there is something wrong. And a lot of people, especially if you suffer from mental illness, it's something you can easily put aside and not think any more of, and just think, well, it's just a symptom. It's just my depression talking. So I was very lucky that I followed my hunch and I said, I'm going to the doctor. I'm going to find out what's going on. I wanted them to rule out a blood clot. And I was very lucky. So I did have my pulmonologist recently say, wow, so you got saved by a TV show. The resident really did save my life. It's just, yeah, that scene just popped in my head. And that really made the difference, because I had also doctors tell me that if I hadn't mentioned the blood clot, that they could have easily turned me away, given me like Advil, told me to see a sports medicine doctor, and that I must have like pulled something, and they would have sent me home like that. But the fact that I mentioned that what if it's a blood clot made them have to dig further, and that I was very, very lucky that I advocated for myself that way. And I am still on blood thinners. I'm going to be on blood thinners for a couple more months once they run their course, and the clots are reabsorbed by the body. Then they will we'll be discussing between my cardiologist, my hematologist, my general doctor, and my pulmonologist. We're all going to be discussing whether or not I will have to be staying on the blood thinners, or if I would be safe enough to come off of them. 10 days after my diagnosis, they submitted me for a battery of tests of genetic issues, and they found I do not have any inherited genetic blood clotting disorders. However, I was showing signs of an acute blood clotting disorder in which my factor VIII was very high. It's almost double what it's supposed to be. So basically my blood vessels were sending out a signal telling my blood to clot, and we don't know why. So there's not much research about it, so they don't know why that's happening, but they have seen it resolve itself, so hopefully it's better in a few months, so I'd be able to safely come off of my blood thinners. So far, I've had a pretty good experience with my blood thinners. I'm on Xarelto. I'm taking 20 milligrams once a day. It has not changed. I know for women who get on blood thinners, one of the big issues is your menstrual cycle. It can become more prolonged, more painful, increase in volume. Thankfully, it has, of course, it increases in volume, it thins it out, but there's more risks of leakage and things of that nature. But thankfully, the pain has not increased, and the length of time of my cycle has not increased, thankfully. And it's several months into blood thinners, into using them. So I'm very thankful for that. I was able to start walking within days of leaving the hospital. However, it wasn't until about 3 months, almost 4 months out, that I was able to comfortably walk several blocks of distance, walk for an hour at a time. And slowly I've been regaining my energy and able to do chores on my own and go up the stairs, even run up the stairs, run down the stairs if I hear the doorbell for like a package or something. So I've come a long way, but it's still some days are very, very difficult. It's really hard to get out of bed. Sometimes your chest is just incredibly, insanely painful. And of course you live with this anxiety, with this fear, it's PTSD. Every pang, every sharp pain, you think, is that another one? And although my doctors have told me that there's very little risk of the clots dislodging, it's not unheard of, and it's not unheard of getting clots even when you're on blood thinners. So it just have to be vigilant and make sure that if I feel anything odd, that I go get it checked out. So I have to continue to advocate for myself. So my pulmonologist had said that the reason that the mortality rate is so high is because people dismiss their symptoms. And so I wanted to make this video, share my story, to really highlight this issue, make others aware of it, and tell people that you need to listen to your body. If something doesn't feel right, if you're running up the stairs and you usually clear them with no issue, and all of a sudden you're panting, your energy levels are lower, your heart rate is kind of jumping around, if you're noticing any weird bruising or anything like that, go get it checked out. Just go to your doctor, find out your medical history, your family medical history. Explore if anybody has any potential blood clotting disorders, or if there's any risks of PEs or DVTs in your family, because it is a genetic, it's a hereditary condition that could present later in life. A lot of things can cause DVTs and PEs, hormonal birth control, smoking, more of a sedentary lifestyle, even being bedridden, so recovering from an illness, having some type of trauma injury in terms of like breaking a bone. I've heard there are people in my support group who have even had a blood clot as a result of a chiropractor adjustment. So there are so many ways it can happen to you. So don't discount it. Really, if something feels wrong, just go, because it can literally be the difference of like life and death. So just go get the answers, even if it's just to calm your fears. It's better to go get it checked out than not and just die suddenly. So I hope that this information was helpful. I hope that it can help someone. As I said, even if it's just one person, I hope that you can be brave and seek answers with medical professionals. I know it's difficult for those who don't have health insurance during this time. It's insanely difficult. All I can do is just stress that this can happen to anyone. So I hope that you listen to yourself and you make that call, the right call for you. So thank you so much if you've watched the video in its entirety. Now my goal is to be uploading regularly on several topics on plants and animals. So I hope that you'll join me in the future. But for now, I want to just extend my gratefulness again for still being here, and wish everyone a good World Thrombosis Day. Just spread the word, share information, share your story, let people know that this is a thing, that this happens, and maybe you can change someone's life for the better. So have a great one and stay safe. Bye.